A reading from the first letter of St. Paul to the Corinthians. Brothers and sisters, if I preach the gospel, this is no reason for me to boast, for an obligation has been imposed on me, and woe to me if I do not preach it. If I do so willingly, I have a recompense, but if unwillingly, then I have been entrusted with a stewardship. What then is my recompense? That when I preach, I offer the gospel free of charge, so as not to make full use of my right in the gospel. Although I am free in regard to all, I have made myself a slave to all, so as to win over as many as possible. I have become all things to all, to save at least some. All this I do for the sake of the gospel, so that I too may have a share in it. Do you not know that the runners in the stadium all run in the race, but only one wins the prize? Run as to win. Every athlete exercises discipline in every way. They do it to win a prize, a perishable crown, but we an imperishable one. Thus I do not run aimlessly. I do not fight as if I were shadowboxing. No, I drive my body and train it, for fear that, after having preached to others, I myself should be disqualified. The word of the Lord.
Rich scriptures today. I want to focus in on St. Paul's letter to the Corinthians here. In particular, what he says about the runners in the stadium. The first, half of my life revolved around training in athletics. And the thing that drove me to want to sacrifice and to work hard was that I loved the games that I trained in, baseball being the foremost amongst them. But it didn't matter if it was like basketball in gym class. I always wanted to be right in the thick of the action. I always wanted to walk away with a win. I always wanted to be able to play well. And so even if I was exhausted, I would still run back to play defense. It didn't matter how hot it was or how recently it had rained outside. If it was humid and swampy, I was still willing to go out and to train. Sometimes I liked the practice better than the games because I got to touch the ball more times. It got to be right there in the center of all the action, the whole practice. It's the game, you get a couple balls hit you in the field, you get 3 or 4 at-bats, and that was it. It's like, we get to practice again tomorrow, Something about just playing the game and being in love with the game that would drive you to do whatever it took. St. Paul is trying to tap into that same reality, right? The runners in the race, right, they're competing for a prize. They deny themselves all kinds of things, and they do it for a perishable crown. So many people in the world that are sacrificing so much of their own comfort, sacrificing their time, sacrificing any number of things in order to achieve goals that are very worldly. What we are offered is so much more than a worldly reward. What we're offered from Christ is something that is eternal. And first, I think it's very important to lean on this pretty hard. What we're being offered is for free. It's a gift. It's not something that you can just decide to work hard for and that you'll get it. Right? It's something that the work is a different kind of work. The suffering is a different kind of suffering. The engagement of the will is still very much there, but the work is in the surrender. When it comes to training for a job, a career, to make money, to get a promotion, to buy a certain kind of house, a certain kind of car, to live a certain kind of lifestyle, if the goal is to attain a certain kind of fitness so that you can run faster than the other athletes in the race, or lift more weight than the other power lifter, or hit the ball farther than the other baseball player, whatever the case might be, you can choose to train harder and max out your talent. And it really depends on you. There's nothing about it that's given. There's natural talent that can kind of be given. Some people have a higher capacity, but in order to tap that capacity out, you got to really dig into it hard. So there's a difference, but there's also a parallel. The difference is it's a gift. And what's required of us is cooperation with God's grace. God's grace is the one doing the work. God's grace is the one that's causing the change and bringing about the growth. He's the one who's doing the purifying, the sanctifying, the unifying. But he can't do it without our giving him permission. Right? Take, for example, Our Lady at the Annunciation. She's got some questions. I don't have a husband. I've not been with a man. How can this be? And she has to take it on faith, but she says, Fiat mihi secundum verbum tuum. Let it be done unto me according to your word. Right? It's his word, it's his work, it's his will, but she's giving her will in cooperation. She's giving her yes. How does St. Paul then bring that back to what does that mean for our life of faith? Run so as to win. Don't run just to run. Right? If we're talking about the casual runner who just runs to kind of like stay in shape or something, that's healthy and good. There's a place for that. But what's the thing that we give our most attention to? Where are our affections most drawn to? Now, your attention is something you have control over a little bit. Your affection is something that's different. You have to choose to pay attention. But the affections, the things that you're attracted to, we don't really control that. You don't choose to make steak your favorite food. It either is, you either try steak and go, oh my gosh, this is my favorite food, or you go, I've had better. I like cheeseburgers better than steak. Okay, fine, it's a preferential thing. There's an attraction that you had perhaps to your spouse, and an initial magnetism that drew you to each other. But you didn't choose to be attracted to them. You just found yourself attracted. So, if the Lord is not the thing that draws our affections the most, then there's still some things that need to be purified in our life. You can be attracted and have affection for all kinds of wonderful, good things that are God's creatures in this world. St. Augustine says that, he searched far and wide looking for God basically in the loveliness of his creatures. But it also, by limiting himself to creatures, created a kind of unloveliness in him. And then finally, when he found the Creator, right, he found love itself. That was what brought about a greater loveliness within himself. So what do we do? I think we have to allow ourselves to encounter the Lord and to be encountered by the Lord. That there does come a point where you either set aside time for him and allow yourself to fall in love with him, or you don't. You're all here today. That's a very good sign. Also looking at a good, well-rounded spiritual life that includes many different spiritual practices. I recall my own story, and I think about it was somebody else who kind of helped to encourage me to choose to go on a retreat when I was in high school, or my affections started to change, or I finally started to love the Lord more than other things. It took a while for that love to grow, but eventually it did overcome those other things, and all of those other things became perishable crowns. And the imperishable crown became the thing that was finally set as the highest priority, as the greatest affection. St. Paul doesn't run aimlessly. He's not just shadow boxing, right? Saying this isn't just practice. This is the game. This is the competition. And it's not just a game, it's eternal life. And so he trains his body, and of course not only his body, but in this analogy, if the athlete trains the body to win a physical competition, then we're called to train the whole person for that eternal prize. Let's ask the Lord today to increase our affections for him, to give us the courage and the generosity and the discipline to choose him, to pay attention to him, to follow him, to offer him all of ourselves, all of our love.